Europe lies in ruins, a dismantled continent where every city smokes like a wounded giant and rivers of fire and ash reflect total destruction. The armies that once imposed terror and domination now crumble before the reality of their defeat, while the men who ruled with an iron fist desperately seek shadows to hide in, moving among rubble, ruins, and ghost towns. The Third Reich has collapsed, but its fall does not mean the end of its secrets or the closure of its paths. Where did the men and women who wove horror across Europe really flee to? What hidden routes and secret refuges received them? Who managed to escape and evade the justice that was spreading like an invisible army across the continent? Where did the Nazi leaders find shelter after their defeat? How did they manage to rebuild lives under new hidden identities, avoiding courts, detectives, and memories that hunted them? Were they aided by clandestine networks, loyal supporters, or even foreign governments willing to protect them, each with its own political and strategic calculation? Every question is a thread leading to a labyrinth of secrets, desperate decisions, and extreme survival, where cunning and luck determined who would live and who would remain trapped in history as a war criminal. It is 1945. Europe, devastated by 6 years of conflict, slowly begins to rise from the rubble of entire cities, destroyed roads, and fallen bridges. The war has officially ended, but the pursuit of Nazi criminals is only beginning. Allied offices, international tribunals, and occupation forces become hunters of an enemy that no longer possesses an army or borders, yet remains active in the shadows, moving cautiously and cleverly. Every fugitive is a puzzle combining intelligence, contacts, risk, and often betrayal. A survival game played between justice, vengeance, and human desperation. The story we are about to explore is not only a narrative of escapes, disappearances, and impossible rescues. It is a tale of action, strategy, and despair, where fear and ambition intertwine, and where each decision could mean freedom or capture. From smoldering bunkers to remote hideouts on distant continents, from forged identities to secret networks crossing borders, every step of these men and women was a gamble on life against the justice looming over them. Who managed to escape? How did they build new lives, hidden from the eyes of history and their pursuers? What invisible forces, unexpected alliances, or desperate decisions allowed them to evade the reach of the law? Each answer reveals a world where cunning, planning, and survival become weapons as powerful as any army, and where history, memory, and morality intertwine with suspense, intrigue, and the urgency of every decision made in the final days of the Reich. This is the story of the fall of an empire, of the men and women who built it, and of how some managed to slip through the rubble, reinventing lives, changing names, disappearing from the world's radar. A story that mixes mystery, tension, strategy, and human despair. A tale where every shadow could be an ally, every route an escape, and every silence a secret that history would take decades to reveal. April 1945. Germany stands on the edge of the abyss, plunged into a chaos few could even imagine. Cities, once centers of industrial pride and culture, burn in a fire that seems to devour everything. Smoke rises like a dense gray curtain, hiding the sky and coating every street and rooftop with ash. Bridges, symbols of German engineering and centuries of history, fall under the weight of Allied artillery. Their rubble blocks roads and rivers, trapping the desperate between ruin and death. The roar of Allied and Soviet tanks echoes through every corner of the nation. A sound that knows no rest and penetrates even the sturdiest walls, reminding everyone that the war has reached the doorstep of their own land. In the underground bunkers, where dimness mixes with the stench of dampness and fear, the High Command of the Reich confronts a reality they never wished to face. Strategic maps hang crooked on the walls, marked in red and black, showing the inexorable advance of enemy forces. Defensive lines collapse, loss reports arrive incessantly, and every message brings a mix of disbelief and terror. The empire that promised to last 1,000 years crumbles before their eyes, like a house of cards slowly toppled by the invisible hand of history. Fear settles as a permanent guest in every thought. It is not only the fear of physical death, but the terror of humiliation, of the definitive fall of a world built on violence and propaganda. Every officer, every close collaborator, every Nazi who once walked proudly under Hitler's shadow feels their very identity unraveling. The certainties that once defined their lives, power, loyalty, supremacy, fade, replaced by a gnawing uncertainty. The corridors of the bunkers, normally filled with orders and planning, now echo with whispers and sidelong glances. No one fully trusts anyone. Every gesture, every word is analyzed under the microscope of fear and survival. Even the Führer, whose voice had been an unyielding law, seems trapped in an abyss of despair that even his most loyal followers feel in silence. His eyes, once bright with conviction, now reflect doubt, fatigue, and a shadow of hopelessness spreading like an ink blot among his officers. Every man asks the same question, over and over, as if repeating it could yield some clue to the answer. Will I survive? Whom can I trust with my life when even the Führer seems trapped in despair? What fate awaits me as enemy armies penetrate further into our territory and the Allies show no mercy? Anxiety becomes a constant companion, a weight pressing on the chest, making even the most hardened men tremble at the thought of what is to come. Outside the bunker, reality is even more brutal. Streets are filled with corpses and ruins. The cries of innocents mingle with the screams of wounded soldiers, and the ghosts of committed horrors feel more present than ever. The nation, once proud and feared, has become a theater of destruction, where history decides relentlessly who will live and who will be forgotten forever. As days pass, rumors multiply. Entire cities fall without resistance. Officers disappear or surrender, and collective fear transforms into a tide, threatening to sweep all along with it. In this environment, the question is not only whether anyone will survive physically, but whether the spirit, mind, and conscience can withstand the avalanche of guilt, terror, and despair surrounding them. Every second is a battle between the faint hope of escape and the certainty that the end is near, that history itself has turned against them, and that nothing they have done will guarantee them protection. The faces of those who once imposed terror now reflect uncertainty and panic. The world they knew has changed irreversibly. Streets are filled with smoking ruins, and every step outside seems a mortal risk. Distrust becomes an instinct for survival. Allies turn suspicious. Orders once sacred now inspire doubt. Every word, every gesture, every decision is a calculation of life or death. Amid the smoke and ash, Nazi leaders feel betrayal lurking around every corner, every comrade possibly an enemy in disguise. The world is collapsing, and we have nowhere to run. That phrase resonates in the corridors of power as officials and officers search for escape routes, hideouts and contacts to protect them. The sensation of defeat mixes with fear of capture and humiliation. Some contemplate suicide to avoid shame. Others flee to unknown territories, and a few, still incredulous, try to maintain control over what is already uncontrollable. Desperation becomes tangible. Plans that once seemed infallible now vanish like smoke among the rubble. Calculating every move becomes an obsession. Every decision carries enormous risks. Should one trust a pilot to escape by plane? Should one follow orders from someone who may have already lost their mind? Which routes are safe and which are watched by enemies, lurking along every road and train station? The mind fractures between fear and logic, adrenaline and paranoia, as days pass and the fall of the Reich becomes inevitable. Amid this chaos, contemporary testimonies reflect the intensity of the situation. Officers shouting, comrades silently crying, soldiers helplessly watching the empire collapse. Each one calculates, lies, betrays, or hides, and in the process, a terrible truth becomes clear. Absolute power corrupts not only the leader, but also those who follow without question. And in the final days of the Reich, fear became the most powerful force governing men who once believed themselves invincible. After the fall of the Third Reich, when Europe still smoldered among ruins and the Nuremberg trials were beginning to take shape, the famous rat lines emerged. Clandestine routes designed to ensure the escape of the most wanted Nazi leaders, officers, and collaborators. These routes were not improvised. They were labyrinths of planning, contacts, and complicity, supported by networks of ideological sympathizers, some clergy offering temporary refuge, and other figures who saw in these fugitives an opportunity to preserve knowledge, connections, or even an ideology that had not entirely disappeared. Every step, every transit through a devastated city was marked by constant tension and risk. A single mistake, a mispronounced name, or a stricter border check could mean the end of freedom and the start of capture. Strategically located countries became key transit points. Spain, still under Franco's regime, offered a temporary refuge where fugitives could regroup and prepare the next stage of the journey. Italy, with its fragmented territory and post-war chaos, also became a vital stopover, while Argentina, with its openness to European immigrants and a network of sympathizers, emerged as the final destination for many of these fugitives. Each crossed border, each reached port, was not merely a physical movement, but a psychological challenge. The paranoia of being discovered mingled with the hope of survival, and every decision could alter the course of an entire life. If they caught me, it would all be over. I couldn't allow it, a fugitive recalled decades later. This statement encapsulates the intensity of each journey. The fear was not abstract. It was tangible, pulsing, accompanying each person on every train, every ship, every secondary road. Every encounter with a network contact, every stamp in a forged passport, represented the thin line between freedom and capture. The mind of each fugitive remained in constant alert, assessing risks, measuring loyalties, and calculating probabilities while crossing territories still bearing the imprint of the recent war. These rat lines not only ensured the immediate survival of many Nazis, they also offered the possibility to reorganize their lives far from Europe, away from courts and the justice system that advanced like an unyielding clock. The escape strategy became an art, a combination of audacity, patience, and skill in manipulating allies and circumstances. Each successful escape reinforced the legend of the clandestine routes, and each arrival in a new country was a silent triumph, a moment of respite, transforming the terror of flight into the possibility of a new existence. Thus, as Europe began to rebuild among ruins and memories of horror, the fugitives of the Reich used these networks to disappear from the map, evade immediate justice, and construct, with calculated and silent steps, a reorganized life, far from the scenes of their crimes and the watchful eyes of a world that would not forget what had occurred. In the months and years following the collapse of the Third Reich, the names of Eichmann, Mengele, Bormann, and other leaders began to transform into legends of the underground. Each of them had their own escape route, secret contacts, and carefully planned concealment techniques. There was no single formula. Some traveled under false identities, others took refuge in cities controlled by discreet allies, while some relied on transit documents created in the shadows by regime sympathizers. Every step was infused with tension and strategy, where a single mistake could mean immediate capture and the end of their freedom. As Allied forces tracked every lead, pursuing names that still resonated with terror across Europe, the fugitives moved like shadows, learning to disappear before the eyes of the world. Every city visited, every port crossed, every border traversed became a survival rehearsal. They analyzed patrol movements, assessed the loyalties of those offering help, and adapted their behavior to avoid raising suspicion. Their existence was reduced to a constant balance between action and reflection, where mental cunning became as crucial as physical skill to move undetected. The use of false documents became an indispensable tool. Altered passports, fraudulent letters of recommendation, stamps simulating legality, all were part of an invisible arsenal of survival. Some resorted to clandestine ships, embarking on dangerous journeys through seas that could be patrolled by allies. Others relied on trains connecting ruined cities, cars borrowed from accomplices, or safe houses where the fugitive's routine could blend with the everyday life of a civilian. Every movement was measured, every decision weighed for risks and benefits, because the slightest signal could trigger capture. Every day could have been the last, but life was more important than pride, a fugitive confessed years later. The statement reflects the mindset of those who survived, a constant conflict between guilt, responsibility for their crimes, and the primal instinct to live. Flight was not only physical, but psychological. Hiding meant renouncing past identity, abandoning symbols of power, and learning to adapt to a new existence built on caution, silence, and constant change. The daily life of these men became a labyrinth of anxiety and calculation. Every social interaction could be a trap, every unfamiliar face a potential traitor. Despite the constant risk, many managed to rebuild their lives in the shadows, always alert to the possibility of capture, but also learning to seize every opportunity that arose. Their individual destinies, separated yet connected by the same goal, survival, demonstrate how Reich leaders transformed fear into strategy, panic into planning, and defeat into a silent act of evasion. Each escape was a combination of luck, ingenuity, and audacity. And although the world sought them in the name of justice, they proved that even the most wanted men could vanish across borders, seas, and forged documents, becoming ghosts of the past who still inspire fascination and mystery today. After years of persecution and the end of World War II, South America became an unexpected sanctuary for many Nazis, who had managed to escape from Europe. Argentina, Chile, and Paraguay emerged as key destinations within the escape networks, receiving those who had lived in hiding for months or years. These countries offered not only a vast and relatively isolated territory, but also contacts, political allies, and a social environment that allowed fugitives to rebuild their lives away from the watchful eyes of the Allies. Arrival was not an act of victory, but one of forced adaptation. Every step required careful calculation, from choosing suitable cities to selecting communities where they could go unnoticed. Fugitives encountered a mosaic of unexpected help. Some local governments, sympathizers of similar ideologies, or members of far-right networks provided direct assistance. Forged documents, land for settlement, businesses functioning as fronts, or jobs that allowed integration without raising suspicion were crucial survival tools. However, every gesture of support also carried risk. Cooperation had to remain secret, and any exposure could drag them back into trial or death. Every encounter, every contract, every signature became an act of survival, where the slightest signal could trigger lethal consequences. Adapting to a new continent was a constant challenge. Culture, language, and customs represented daily obstacles for men accustomed to power and control in Europe. Learning to integrate without standing out became as important as evading justice. They had to be invisible among the local population, observing and studying every movement, every social interaction, while keeping their real identity hidden behind false names and fabricated biographies. Daily routine became an exercise in extreme caution. Going to the market, socializing, traveling, or even attending public events always carried the possibility of recognition. Building new identities was not a superficial act, but a complex psychological process. Many had to renounce symbols, memories, and relationships that connected them to their previous life. Guilt, constant fear, and paranoia mixed with the need to survive, and in some cases, the ambition to thrive in the new environment. Every step in daily life was marked by tension. How to speak, how to act, how to respond to simple questions, all had to be carefully calculated. The balance between the appearance of normality and constant alertness defined these men's existence, turning each day into a strategic act. Neighbors' testimonies describe encounters with men who seemed normal, but were always alert, with fear in their eyes. These observations reveal the double life the fugitives led, integrated into the community, participating in everyday life, but always vigilant, aware that any lapse could expose them. Eyes watching attentively behind curtains, cautious visits to public places, and constant evaluation of those around them were manifestations of a survival instinct honed by years in hiding. Every daily gesture, no matter how insignificant, became an act of calculation and self-control, where the past could not be mentioned and the present had to be continuously protected. Interaction with the local society demanded extreme social discipline. They had to learn to establish superficial relationships, maintain trivial conversations, and avoid any hint of their true identities. Life became a game of masks, where any expression revealing anxiety or guilt could raise suspicion. The constant tension between who they were and what they displayed turned many into masters of concealment, capable of moving among the population, appearing as ordinary neighbors or colleagues, while their minds remained at maximum alert, measuring every reaction, every word. Despite the apparent calm, life in South America was a silent battlefield. Every action was accompanied by strategic reflection. Where to buy food, how to interact with authorities, what businesses to undertake, how to maintain routine without arousing suspicion. Survival depended on the ability to blend normalcy with caution, discretion with audacity. Fugitives who settled in Argentina, Chile, or Paraguay lived in delicate balance, a parallel world where outward peace contrasted with the internal storm of fear, guilt, and constant vigilance, demonstrating that fleeing did not mean escaping war, but relocating it to a shadowy stage where every decision could determine the continuation of life or ultimate exposure. While some Nazis opted for South America, others decided to remain in Europe or move to the Middle East, choosing environments closer to home, but equally risky for rebuilding their lives. This decision was not a whim, but a strategic calculation. South America offered distance, but also isolation. Staying in Europe or moving to the Middle East allowed them to maintain some cultural familiarity, networks of old acquaintances, and access to political or financial contacts that could be useful for reconstructing a discrete existence. Every move had to be carefully planned, every city chosen with the precision of a chess player, anticipating every possible threat, interrogation, and allied patrol that could cross their path at any moment. Changing names, professions, and habits became essential for survival. Reich officials, scientists, doctors, or administrators adopted completely new identities. Some posed as merchants, engineers, or professors. Others assumed entirely invented roles that justified their presence and specialized knowledge. False documentation was only the first layer of protection. The real challenge was maintaining the character, learning to respond naturally to unexpected questions, and avoiding any gesture, word, or habit that could give them away. Living a double life became an exhausting routine, a constant exercise in memory, vigilance, and self-control. Every social encounter became a high-risk game. Friends, neighbors, or colleagues could be former sympathizers, confidants, or undercover Allied spies, ready to report anyone who seemed out of place. Even within circles of ex-officers or past acquaintances, distrust became the norm. Greetings were measured, conversations short and superficial, and any comment about the war or the past had to be avoided at all costs. The fear of exposure was constant, and many lived decades under this pressure, aware that a single indiscretion could erase all they had achieved and return them to a fate of imprisonment, trial, or worse. I learned not to trust anyone, not even myself, admits a former Nazi officer. This phrase encapsulates the paranoia that dominated the fugitives' daily lives. Internal fear was as powerful as any external threat. Constant surveillance of their surroundings, reading every gesture, and anticipating any potentially dangerous situation became automatic habits, almost conditioned reflexes. Every purchase, every conversation, every walk down the street was meticulously evaluated. Who is watching? Has someone recognized their face? Is information being used against them? The fugitive's mind became an invisible battlefield, where every thought was analyzed with military precision. Cultural and linguistic adaptation was another critical challenge. Those who moved to the Middle East had to learn not only languages, but also social codes, religious traditions, and local customs to avoid suspicion. Integration was not about social acceptance, but pure survival. Every misinterpreted cultural gesture could be an alert, and the ability to act naturally within a completely different environment became a life-or-death skill. Ex-officers had to become permanent actors, performing roles that distanced them from their past, but kept them alive. Psychological isolation was inevitable. Life in the shadows meant giving up deep emotional bonds, maintaining a minimal and reliable network of contacts, and limiting contact with family to avoid compromising them. Loneliness, nostalgia, and constant fear for personal safety created a state of perpetual tension. Daily routine, although seemingly normal, was infused with anxiety and vigilance. Each night, as they closed their eyes, the mind would replay every interaction, every decision of the day, and evaluate potential risks. A friend might have recognized them. A neighbor might have noticed something strange. An Allied officer could be following their trail. Ultimately, life in Europe and the Middle East required patience, discipline, and resilience. Survival depended on a constant balance between social adaptation, emotional control, and strategic calculation. Rebuilding a safe existence was a slow and meticulous process, where each year without incidents reinforced the sense of invisibility, but never completely eliminated the threat. Living like this for decades demonstrated that escaping justice did not mean freeing oneself from the past, but learning to coexist with it intelligently and cautiously, transforming each day into an act of silent resistance and extreme calculation. After the end of World War II, the world was not satisfied with the fall of the armies and the destruction of the Third Reich. The Allied powers, aware that the main architects of horror could escape, began a relentless pursuit. Agencies, such as the Israeli Mossad and independent Nazi hunters, launched complex operations to locate fugitives who had hidden in distant countries or merged into the everyday life of European, Latin American, or Middle Eastern cities. Every lead was carefully evaluated. Every rumor, every testimony could become the key that led to the capture of a criminal who had managed to evade immediate justice. The fugitives quickly learned to live under this constant pressure. Their movements were carefully planned, their identities reinforced with false documents, and their social connections carefully selected. Paranoia became part of their daily existence. Every encounter with a neighbor, every seemingly innocent conversation, every visit to an office or bank was assessed as a potential threat. Life, though seemingly normal, was infused with fear, distrust, and perpetual vigilance. The memory of defeat and the possibility of being captured kept them in a state of constant alertness, aware that a single mistake could mean the end of their freedom. "I never felt completely free," admitted one of those captured. This phrase reflects the constant psychological tension that accompanied fugitives for decades. Even those who managed to integrate into distant societies or adopt new professions could never lower their guard. Each day was a balance between surviving, maintaining their facade, and avoiding the attention of those determined to bring them to justice. Fear did not only come from state forces, but also from local informants, curious neighbors, and former colleagues who might have their own motives for exposing them. Living like this was a game of patience, strategy, and extreme calculation, where every small detail could determine the difference between freedom and capture. Many of these fugitives, even decades later, were located and arrested. Some, like Adolf Eichmann, captured in Argentina in 1960, became symbols of delayed justice, proving that time does not erase the crimes committed or individual responsibility. Each capture became an event charged with tension and meaning, a mixture of relief for the victims and a testament to the perseverance of international justice. Operations to capture them required not only skill and resources, but also meticulous planning that combined intelligence, infiltration, and analysis of complex human networks. The psychological impact of being captured after years on the run was profound. Fugitives moved from the illusion of control and anonymity to confronting the reality of their actions, their crimes, and the inevitability of justice. Each arrest represented a clash between security built on fear and the inescapable truth of their past. The transition from the shadows to judicial light generated mixed feelings: fear, resignation, but also, at times, a strange relief at ending years of constant vigilance and dread, even if justice had arrived late. The capture of these individuals also had a symbolic and educational effect on the world. It demonstrated that war crimes do not expire, and that history can reach even those who tried to escape. Each extradition, trial, and conviction served as a reminder that impunity was not possible, sending a message to future generations about the need for responsibility, historical memory, and the impossibility of evading the consequences of atrocious acts. The narrative of the pursuit, from Europe to South America and the Middle East, became a testament to how justice can operate beyond time and geography, combining investigation, action, and global strategy. Finally, the pursuit of these war criminals showed humanity's resilience in the face of horror. The tracking was not only a military or police effort, but also a moral process, seeking justice for millions of victims who could no longer speak. The fugitives, despite their intelligence and caution, found themselves facing relentless forces, networks of experienced hunters, and the inevitable weight of their past. Each arrest, capture, or extradition represented a partial closure of the darkest chapters of history, and a lesson that freedom obtained through fear and lies is always fragile and temporary. After the fall of the Third Reich, not all war criminals faced justice immediately. Some found hidden paths, thanks to international networks that operated with precision and discretion. These networks were composed of ideological supporters of Nazism, clerics who offered help under the guise of humanitarian refuge, and secret organizations operating across countries, providing false documentation, secure transport, and strategic contacts. Every movement, every decision to cross a border was measured and calculated, and each step depended on trust in these networks. The existence of these structures demonstrates that history is built not only on the battlefield, but also in the shadows, where politics, ideology, and survival intertwine in complex ways. Some governments, motivated by political affinities or economic interests, allowed certain Nazis to settle temporarily on their territory. Spain, Italy, Argentina, and Paraguay became key transit or refugee points, where officials and hierarchs could partially rebuild their lives, remain hidden, and reorganize escape plans to other regions of the world. Collaboration was not always official. Sometimes it consisted of the silent complicity of officials, businessmen, or citizens with international connections who offered assistance in exchange for loyalty, favors, or simply ideological affinity. Each protection granted became another link in a chain, that kept fugitives one step ahead of justice, prolonging impunity and challenging global morality. For years, I was protected, but I always knew the peace I lived was borrowed, admitted one refugee, reflecting the paradox of freedom under the shadow of clandestinity. These complicities were not only strategic, but also deeply human and contradictory. While millions of people had been victims of atrocious crimes, there were individuals and networks who, out of convenience or conviction, decided to help those who had directly participated in these crimes. The phenomenon shows how history can be manipulated by political power, economic calculation, and ideology, and how justice, even as a global ideal, can sometimes be subordinated to local or international interests. The actions of these networks turned the pursuit of Nazis into a game of intelligence, patience, and calculation, where every move had to be carefully planned to avoid detection by allies or international justice agencies. In the corridors of power, international politics played a decisive role in the survival of fugitives. Tacit agreements, convenient silences, and strategic interests allowed some hierarchs and officers to remain active for years. Political geography, the distance from devastated Europe, and the opening of transit routes to South America or the Middle East provided fertile ground for evasion. Each protection obtained was an example of how political decisions can directly influence the course of history, and how international ethics are sometimes displaced by convenience, ideology, or fear. Life in these refugees was not peaceful. It was marked by constant fear of being reported or captured. The protection offered by supporters or governments did not eliminate the threat of justice. Each fugitive had to learn to adapt, change habits, adopt new identities, and maintain a convincing facade of normality. International networks functioned as a lifeline: secure transport, document forgery, contacts for essential supplies, and alerts about potential searches. Strategy and caution were constant, and survival depended on the ability to navigate hidden loyalties and uncertain alliances. I learned to distrust everyone, even those who protected me. The price of freedom was living always on alert, recalled another former officer, demonstrating how complicity could save a life, but never provide peace of mind. Ultimately, these international networks and political complicities transformed the story of Nazi fugitives into a tale of prolonged survival, extreme ingenuity, and strategic calculation. Every contact, every favor, every safe route contributed to the extension of their freedom, while justice struggled to reach them. Temporary refuges, political protections, and ideological allies created a parallel world where history could be shaped, delayed, or distorted. Yet even in the shadows, tension, fear, and the inevitability of judgment remained, reminding that evading justice, although prolonged, was always fragile and precarious.